So James Gunn is easily one of the best comic book directors today. Whether it's his work at DC or Marvel, this man is just an all-timer in his craft, always finding ways to get us invested in these flawed and damaged characters. Now, I mentioned this before, but Gunn is not a perfect director by any means. He is not some Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve. While he is great at what he does, he is far from perfect. He isn't someone who's gonna make movies that are made for everyone. What he does best is give us stories about these comic book characters in authentic ways, mainly through team films, but he has delivered these damaged characters that is each filled with so much love. I remember seeing Guardians of the Galaxy for the first time back in 2014. My favorite scene was a scene where Star-Lord read the letter from his mom. This scene demonstrates so much emotion. Without this moment, I don't think I would be that big of a fan of superhero movies in general. The thing is though, Gunn has mainly done these stories about nobody teams, whether it was the Guardians or even Creature Commandos. So this was a very different style than what he was used to, making it his biggest challenge yet. But not only did he deliver a great film, but he also gave us a great Superman film, which today is really hard because of how complicated it is to write the character, giving us something completely different than what we are used to with James Gunn. This film had so much at stake, it was honestly unfair. Not only did it have to go up against films like Jurassic World Rebirth, not that it put up a fight, but it also had to deal with the baggage of its own franchise, which was set to flames years ago. It's hard enough to regain an audience. Imagine having to regain an audience that is already turned against you. It's not exactly a secret to say that the DC brand has been in a whole and utter mess, all from the disconnect to bad storytelling to corporate slop and oversaturation. There were a few home runs, but in the end, it tends to be the same. Miss after miss and flop after flop, each getting worse as time has gone on. Throw in the amount of controversy that has plagued DC over the past few years, so it's clear that DC needed a savior for a long time. They needed a reset for a long time, so this had plenty of pressure. However, I don't just think this was a film important to the future of DC, it's a film important to society today. This is a film that the world needs now more than ever, as in times like this, we need hopeful films like Superman. We live in a time where toxicity is all over the place, and it just gets worse day by day. Real life, it's a lot easier, but when it comes to internet, it's different. All we have are people complaining like people are just born miserable. Take the discourse around this film as a prime example. Most of the complaints felt like some of the most mindless nonsense. I have never seen this much hate around a film ever. Now, this isn't surprising because it's a new Superman movie. It's always gonna have this, but the stretches people were taking were just mind-boggling to me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying you can't critique things, as film is subjective. If you aren't liking what you're seeing from the promotion, that's fine. What isn't fine is complaining like you've already seen the movie. If you have a valid complaint after you've seen the movie, go ahead and tell us why. At best, these are dumb nitpicks, let's be honest. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, we live in dark times right now than ever before, and it just gets worse as time goes on. In a world of Homelanders, we need a Superman. We finally are at the perfect point for Superman to return to the big screen. People may think Superman's ideals are outdated for modern audiences, and I couldn't disagree with that more. It's just a dumb criticism. The world may change, but his ways never do. It's always what makes the character special and stands the test of time. Gunn's style is so much different with this new approach that it feels like a complete 180. But what he does with this world is so inviting that I was invested all the way. It has his signature style you love, but in a more serious tone. One of Gunn's biggest flaws is that sometimes the humor can be overdone. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Peacemaker are the worst ones, especially Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And this film does have humor, but it's more serious than Gunn's normal type. However, there is as much of a hopeful heart that goes along with the character Superman. He delivers a story about hope and love in the world and makes it perfect. It adds a lot of levity that you would expect from James Gunn. The music is also different, with it being more score driven this time around. That was one of my worries. John Murphy has done great work, but I was just not sure if he was able to do a score of this magnitude. I loved his scores for Suicide Squad and 28 Days Later, but then he made the generic Guardians of the Galaxy 3 soundtrack. Besides the high evolutionary theme, that was a very forgettable score. But after this, I am never doubting John Murphy again. The score has many nods to the John Williams theme, but it feels like its own version for this character. I wasn't sure about this, but it works really well. Plus, the Superman theme is like the James Bond theme, so I'm not too upset about this. It was also helped by David Fleming, which also makes it a lot more inviting. Along with that, many other people come back, like cinematographer Henry Braham, who did all of Gunn's work since Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but he also did The Flash.
Bruh.
What? We're flying to Philadelphia!
Oh hell no! Hell no!
Many people have drawn criticisms toward this. Honestly, this has always bugged me. When I first saw it, I didn't love the look, but when you see it in theaters, it looks so much better. It reminds me of Deadpool and Wolverine. When I saw those trailers, I wasn't sold on looking some shots, but when you see it in action, it looks so much better. It's also just annoying how people just dismissed him because he did the Flash. The problem with the Flash was never the way it was shot. It was the fact it had god-awful visuals, not the cinematography. Watch any of Braham's work, you can easily see how he can handle Superman, and it looked great. James Gunn absolutely lived up to this pressure. Honestly, I don't even think it's debatable anymore. This man is like top 3 comic book movie director. The fact he delivered a great film with all this at stake is impressive. Not to mention being miserable while making it. The way this film was shot, his camera angles are just so inviting. The camera movement feels so handheld and deliverable, giving us so many great action scenes. But outside of that, Gunn has made a film that he wants to do since 2018, making a film that feels worth it. If I'm being honest, this is the most comic book movie I've seen in a minute. What I mean by that is this film is not afraid to get into the weird or the fantastical. It leans into that side of the world, and I love that Gunn took that risk. James Gunn just crafted something special, with an auteur vision that has a lot of passion. This is what happens when people come together to make a big blockbuster. It truly feels like Gunn's magnum opus, treating these characters with respect that hasn't been done in years, which is impressive. But let's get into the movie itself, as we were trying to answer if Superman saved the DCU in this video, because one thing I noticed upon rewatching is that this is insanely rewatchable. It has issues for sure, but it is such a blast that I just can't help but feel invested. Now, like all of Gunn's work, I don't think this will work for everyone. The vast majority seem to be liking or loving this film, but there are things in here that won't always work. It's nothing divisive, but it has things that aren't for everyone. However, I would be lying if I said when I saw this for the first time, I didn't have the biggest smile on my face, because this is the Superman movie I have always wanted. It feels like everything I wanted Henry Cavill's version to be. The story is played out in an episodic nature. It feels very cartoony at times, which I think won't sit well with everyone, and there are some times where random things just happen. But each thing serviced the plot nicely towards the end, so I'm not upset about this. The story feels refreshing in its own right. In this film, we follow Clark 3 years in as he tries to find out who he is, what his legacy is, and what kind of man he wants to be. In a way, it's a character study on Superman. What I think makes the story work so well is that it's really something we needed, as we see Superman enter a cynical world where he wants to do the right thing. When telling a story, story writers look at the world to see what's happening, then use that to tell interesting stories around it. So there is simply no better time to tell a Superman story than right now. What I think makes this story work so well is that we just go straight into the action of the DC universe. We see many heroes in this world, in which we will get into, but this has been something people have been concerned about, with some thinking it would be overstuffed. This is actually a criticism I can understand to an extent. I think this just comes from how BVS handled so many characters, how it made it feel overstuffed. So I don't really blame people for that. When you're burnt, it's hard to forget.
Why did you say that name?
The thing is, the other heroes are just like when supporting characters show up in other films. Films have always had big supporting casts, but find a way to focus on the protagonist. Take Oppenheimer. That has so many characters, but did it feel unfocused? Not even close. It's still focused on the main character. Here, it's the same thing, but instead of those characters, they're characters we know from the comics. The heroes fit in the story of Superman really nicely. This also serves as excellent world building. The themes of this story are also so sentimental. This story focuses a lot on parenthood and legacy, about how your parents inform who you are as a person and the struggles you face because of that. There's also a plot around the war between the countries of Baravia and Jonapur. I probably butchered that, sorry. This part can get political, but for the plot, it works really well. It is a means to detail the oppression of these people. This also fits as the immigration side perfectly, as Lex is using Baravia to take control of Jonapur, so this war is a real part to its theme and makes the film work. The biggest theme of this film is being kind. Superman's pod has a broken message from his parents, and he thought at the end of it, it was to send him to Earth to be a good man and help humanity. Even in a world where that is old-fashioned, he stays true to who he is. Superman cares for everyone, not just grown-ups or kids, but even squirrels. It's a theme that can really teach us to be better. The characters around this story also work great. Some get less screen time than others, but in no time did I feel like anyone really got entirely wasted. Each character works really well in the context of the film and has a satisfying conclusion. In this film, we see David Cornsweet don the cape of Superman. I remember wanting him as Superman years ago, and when he was announced, I went crazy. I only saw him in Pearl, but he was great in that, so I knew he was likely gonna kill it, and he did not disappoint. From the marketing, it seemed like they gave Superman more of a personality than we expected. One of the biggest issues with Superman is that it's hard to relate to him given how powerful he is. Gunn actually said in an interview that he didn't want him to be so powerful, as he wanted him to be more human. As a fan, I understand not liking this, but at the same time, I understand wanting to make a god more human. Superman just feels way more human than he ever has been. There is a big deviation from the source material here, that being his parents sent Kal-El to Earth to rule, similar to Invincible. This is something I don't think everyone is gonna love. When I first heard about this idea, I hated this idea. I'm not crazy about the idea of Superman's parents sending Kal down to Earth to rule humanity. It could have been a scheme by Luthor, but clearly that was not the case. But now that I let this film sit with me and seeing it, I actually think this works really well. One of the biggest themes of this film is parenthood. You got the side of Clark's Kryptonian heritage and his human heritage that form who he is. My favorite scene of this movie is one that revolves around Clark and Pa Kent. Clark, after finding out the truth, is conflicted about who he is, but Pa says, what he does makes him who you are. This moment was handled incredibly emotionally and hit hard. At the start, we see him listening to Jor-El to calm him down, but by the end, he listens to his Earth memories to calm him down. It's just so good. We see the man Clark wants to be and the man he is really under those glasses. I will say I do wish we had more of Clark Kent. Even though I'm still happy with what David did, this version has easily skyrocketed to one of my favorite versions of the character. No matter what we see, so much depth from this character just improves him so well. In 1938, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created Superman. They created a character to give people hope in dark times. When he was created, the Great Depression hit, which was the greatest economic downturn ever. Anyone born then was basically hopeless. People born then lived in the worst point in history, living in a time of unemployment and poverty. So when Superman came in, he gave people something to dream about, something people needed. Now it is worth mentioning back then we didn't have any Superman adaptations. Of course there were the comics, we also had the classic serials back in the 50s.
Hi, it's a bird.
It's a plane!
It's Superman!
But those films didn't adapt Superman the way audiences wanted. Until 1978, when Richard Donner made Superman the movie. With Christopher Reeve in the iconic role, the awe and wonder in that film cannot be understated. Even if you hate this film, you cannot deny the impact it had. This film did the impossible, to capture Superman well. You're probably thinking, why am I dedicating a portion of this video to this topic? Think about our history, and think about where we are today. We live in dark times, just like when America went through the Great Depression. We need hope. That's why we need Superman. In a world filled with toxicity that gets worse every day, we need a hopeful Superman now more than ever before. Outside of Superman, what I was most interested in was Lois Lane. I think Rachel Brosnahan was perfect casting. She was fantastic in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and was just the perfect person to take on this role. Rachel brings this spunk and sass that you need for Lois. What makes Lois such a great character is that she isn't some damsel in distress. She has always been in the pursuit of truth and justice. It's what makes Superman and Lois such a great couple, even if they do it in different ways. They challenge each other, but they just work so well together. The chemistry between David and Rachel is just on point. Is something so vitally important to any Superman story. Clark loves Lois. She is the heart of these stories, so you need to believe that they can work together. In the movie, there is a 10-minute interview scene that sums it up perfectly. You see the duality of these characters and how they operate, it all works, and you see these actors really can play their roles. After the interview scene, Lois says, I knew this wouldn't work. Clark and Lois have been dating for 2 months, but don't know if it's something forever. While Clark knows he loves Lois, she is unsure of where they are going. But then by the end, she says she loves Clark. It just demonstrates how far this relationship has grown along the journey. Lex Luthor here is also easily the best Lex Luthor we have seen in a movie. This dude is an all-time hater and I love it. Movie Lexes in the past few years haven't really been the best, to put it nicely. Even in the original Richard Donner film, I wouldn't say it's like a pitch perfect Lex Luthor. Nicholas Hoult does a great job in this role, something I knew he would. I mean, this dude literally auditioned for Superman and Batman and got Lex Luthor. This man plays both the genius side of Lex Luthor and the hater side perfectly. Holt was in a movie a few years ago called The Menu. In that film, he plays this little loser asshole, and this just proves that he was perfect casting for Lex. This dude was literally throwing pencils at Eve and giving ego speeches. This dude even was talking about who he was gonna kill next after doing a Russian roulette, just to get Superman mad. This was just top tier Lex Luthor. I would argue this is on par with some of the best comic book villains of all time. Also, I forgot to talk about Krypto while I was editing this video, but I gotta say, I absolutely love this dog. I still can't believe when this was announced, people literally were just hating on this for no reason whatsoever. When Lex took him, I just wanted to go out and find him. He may be reckless thanks to Kara, but it is such a treat to sit through. The other Superman supporting characters also work really well. Jimmy is just perfect on every level. The Rizzler over here just doing his thing, and Skylar Gazzando did a great job. There's a side plot where he and Eve have a romance, and it's just so entertaining. While in the middle of editing, it was said that a show based on Jimmy Olsen is being considered. Same goes for Mr. Terrific. Both would honestly be great, but I'm sure some may think Jimmy Olsen can't handle a show, which I can understand being hesitant about that, but Jimmy not only has had his own comic runs, but also one thing this film needed more of was the Daily Planet, and Jimmy was one of the highlights of this film. I would watch a Daily Planet Office type show in an instant. Not to mention, Pa and Ma are just fantastic. They actually feel like farmers, and it was great to see them use these characters well. Then there are the people who work for Lex, like Engineer and Ultraman, who work well enough. However, at times they could do more. The rest of the heroes also work really well and are integral to the story. Hawkgirl is one I do wish we saw more of. The moment they announced Isabel Merced, I was hyped, but she doesn't have a lot of screen time, so I was a little disappointed by that. The one thing I was interested in was Guy Gardner, as I have been mixed on this for a while. I was never crazy about Nathan Fillion playing this character, and no, it's not because of his age, it's because I think he fits Hal more than Guy. Plus, I was never crazy about Guy Gardner to begin with. I owe Nathan a huge apology because he was a standout in this film. Every time this dude speaks, it's some of the most funny stuff throughout the entire film. Frankly, this made me more excited for Lantern since he's appearing in that. Just great all around, and I can't wait to see more of him. Metamorpho is also a huge surprise for me. I never saw anything with this character, so I went in blind. This character just brings so much emotion to this film, even without speaking. Anthony Carrigan, who has alopecia, said he actually took that as inspiration as he sees his character as a freak and he related to that, which just adds more layers to his performance. But the hero I was most excited to see was Mr. Terrific, who is a character I've liked for years, so seeing him in this film was just a sight for sore eyes. He is very important to the story and his fundamentals of Superman's story. Plus, now we get Justice for Darwin. The heroes represent a more corporate team funded by Maxwell Lord. It's actually a meta commentary on superhero films as a whole. We have seen that these studios have turned these characters into money IPs and nothing more. It's why people claim superhero fatigue is a thing. No better to do that than with the first superhero. In a world where we have heroes everywhere, what makes them special? It's an interesting idea. Now look, I've been very positive and for good reason, but I do have some minor nitpicks because this film is a pure comic book film. It is not afraid to go into the weird elements, so for some it may not work. This worked for me, but I can easily see some being turned off by it. The pacing at times goes really quick. I think this film needed to be a bit longer because at times it can feel rushed. Think of it like Deadpool and Wolverine's pacing. It's not bad, it just goes so quick you lose track of time. Along with that, some of the characters don't get enough time to shine, specifically Hawkgirl and a few others. I wouldn't say it breaks the film, but is for sure an issue. At times it can be overstuffed, but nothing to the point of no return. The final complaint I have, and this is a minor complaint, but some of the CGI can look a bit off at times, but even then most of the CGI looks great, so this is just me nitpicking at best. But overall, this film works really nice even with my minor issues. Now that we have gone through all of that, what does the future of DC look like? Well, this film doesn't do much to set up the future, besides Peacemaker Season 2 and Supergirl. For Peacemaker, it's hard to tell unless it's involved with Flag. Supergirl does appear in this film, but only in a cameo role. I gotta say, Millie just looks fantastic as this character. The suit just looks so good, and she is just perfect casting. Fun fact, I actually thought of her for the role when the way they described this character being in the DCU. But the only thing it really leads to is her and Krypto going into space. And if you have read the Woman of Tomorrow comic, you know exactly what's next. Personally, I still think we are in a wait and see type deal. Yes, this film is great, but we don't know how it's going to perform. This is a make or break for DC, so I still think we should wait and see until we see the final results of this film. Not to mention, we still don't know what's going on with certain things. We know Brave and the Bold is being written right now. The Wonder Woman movie is also in the writing process, but outside of that, we know nothing about Flash or Aquaman. Then there is Peacemaker Season 2, that is next, and I'm really excited for that. Lantern sounds like it could be very formative toward the DC's future. Supergirl, I think people are sleeping on that film. It actually shows a lot of potential, so I'm really excited for that. Then we have the standalone Clayface movie. And finally, Creature Commando Season 2 and Mr. Miracle, all of which are going well. However, there is still so much we don't know about. We don't know if certain things will happen, with Gunn wanting good scripts first and foremost. We don't know when things like Waller, Swamp Thing, or Booster Gold will happen. Then there's things like the Sergeant Rock movie coming from Luca Guadagnino, but then it was canceled and then it was not canceled. I don't know, man. They gotta stop announcing so many movies, man. So we are still probably in for some fixing going on behind the scenes, but if this film is what we are basing off of, I am totally on board. Again, I don't know what's gonna happen. If all things go smoothly, we should be set, but Superman has truly set the foundation for this universe in a massive way. But there is still so much work needed to be done. So much uncertainty still remains in this franchise. It's hard to see where this series is going overall even after this film. It's really going to depend on this film's box office. Now, if you guys know me, I don't care about money. I think people really overestimate that. Heck, even WB isn't expecting much, so it isn't the end of the world if it doesn't do crazy numbers. But we also need to be realistic about how this is going to make or break this world. Tracking does seem promising overall, nothing spectacular, but still good enough to get by, because I think they know this film isn't going to do as well as it should after everything. But overall, we are still in a wait and see situation. I don't think one film is enough to put this franchise back on track after constant flops DC's had. This film is just a good starting point. So while I did love Superman, I do think this film was a savior DC needed, but did it save it for the general public? We'll have to wait and find out. So guys, what did you think about Superman? Let me know in those comments down below whether you loved it or hated it, and whether you thought it saved the DCU or not. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, but until next time, take care!